Over the past week or so, Corrie has rightly come in for a barrage of criticism, whether that be from actors previously on the show, like Sally Ann Matthews, media outlets like the Metro, or fan backlash on various social media platforms like Twitter and Reddit. This has only intensified thanks to a somewhat misjudged podcast interview given by producer Ian McLeod, where, among other things, he talked about the need for Corrie to compete with Netflix dramas, as well as the fact that they don't listen to audience feedback on Twitter. Now, it saddens me to see the heart and soul being ripped out of this once great soap, as well as the bosses in charge not being willing to listen. So today I'm going to talk about what I think needs to be done to improve the state of Coronation Street. Corrie used to weave social issues into character-based stories, whether that was through the introduction of transgender character Hayley Patterson in the 90s, or Aidan's suicide story back in 2018. Now it's issue after issue. Paul Foreman's motor neuron disease story was followed very quickly by Debbie's dementia diagnosis, and that leads to viewer fatigue, with issue-based stories being put front and centre. When stories are pitched nowadays, it seems to be with this attitude that Corrie have to raise awareness. But less is more. If you scale the issue stories back, they will have greater impact. Coronation Street, under Kate Brooks, has this real issue at the moment of doing too many things at once. It's not enough to tell a story about David and Shona having a baby, for example. That baby has to be ill and premature, and also Shona has to have a sister turn up and steal her life for some reason. Bernie can't just lose her former son-in-law, she's also got to turn to drugs and have someone stalk her. All in the space of a couple of months. And don't get me started on what happened with Toya a couple of years ago. I think she was having an affair with her sister's husband, dealing with cancer, and dealing with the fact that she buried the baby in the park years ago at the same time. Slow down. Stories need to be able to breathe. There are 5 episodes a week. You have time to explore things deeply. Remember when this show used to be about the everyday life of a back street in Manchester? We saw the machinists gossip at the factory, the regulars at the Rovers, the small moments that make the big moments count. Now we don't see the machinists. The Rovers feel dead with the bar staff outnumbering the customers, and essential sets like the cabin are deemed unnecessary, to the point where they were moved in favour of police stations and hospital sets. The producers need to remember what this show is about. If we wanted to watch Line of Duty, we'd watch Line of Duty. If we wanted to tune into Casualty, we'd watch that. We tune into Coronation Street because we want to watch Coronation Street. Which leads me to my next point. Reduce the focus on crime. Every story at the moment seems to lead to a character committing a crime, or being arrested, or being wrongly imprisoned in jail because the Weatherfield one was a popular story 30 years ago. In my opinion, the police station set should be scrapped altogether. It has no business being a regular set in soap. We need humour to balance out the misery. Sadly, the best we seem to get nowadays is Brian or Mary saying or doing something daft. The Corrie I grew up with had Blanche saying something cutting, Norris being irritating, or Rita and Emily rolled their eyes. Where's today's equivalent? I want Corrie to put a smile on my face. Instead, they're more likely to make me depressed. The most recent example of this, and this is a spoiler, is the upcoming reveal that Jim cheated on Liz in the 70s, I think, and fathered a child. Jim would never have done that. A perfect example of Corrie throwing away character history for the sake of a shock reveal. We also had the same recently with Debbie and the reveal that Carl is her son. And how about Carl O'Connor? There's absolutely nothing wrong with telling a story about a woman falling in love with another woman. Obviously, sexuality can evolve. But When you make a significant shift in the identity of a character who has been on screen for nearly 20 years, you have to explore that journey. You have to show the questioning, the surprise, the internal conflict. Corrie simply hasn't done the work here, and so I can't buy into her relationship with Lisa. A few years ago, during the hate crime story, we had a really promising next generation of characters rise up through the ranks. Nina had just taken centre stage in a big story. Adi and Asha both showed promise. We'd known Amy since she was born, so we were attached to her. And Summer represented something different. A teenager who was studious and level-headed. Since then, Nina has been wasted, Adi has left, while Asha was given a depressing breakdown story that kind of went nowhere. Amy gets barely anything to do now, and Summer had so much story a few years ago that the character burnt out quickly. Meanwhile, every character younger than them is being turned into a generic rebellious teen, the latest example being Lily, who was stripped of what was promising to be an interesting personality. We need a reason to invest in the up-and-coming characters. Otherwise, why are we expected to care when they take centre stage in a big story? Corrie is overrun with villains at the moment. There's Carl, there's Theo, Maggie, Jodie. The show has become an endless conveyor belt of the villain of the month ruining long-term characters' lives and causing chaos before being bumped off only to be replaced by someone else. Once upon a time, Corrie didn't have villains. It had antagonists that caused conflict. When they introduced Alan Bradley in the 80s, it took 3 years for the story to unfold, giving Corrie time to properly explore the character and the impact he had on Rita and Jenny. Ideally, I want to ban villains for a bit, but if we have to have them, make them nuanced and layered. A lot of us watch Corrie to escape after a long day at work or dealing with whatever life's thrown at us that day. Coronation Street is our comfort blanket, or at least it used to be. Now, every episode is filled wall to wall with miserable, depressing stories involving health issues, death or crimes. Any warmth is being completely sucked out. Tony Warren's vision for Coronation Street was to create a gritty, honest and matriarchal drama that immortalised the ordinary working class life of Northern England. Now the grit has turned into trauma, most of the characters are unlikable and unrelatable, and the matriarchs are a thing of the past. I'm not suggesting completely rewinding the Coronation Street in the 60s, that show wouldn't work today either. But there is absolutely a way to write a contemporary drama that stays true to Coronation Street's origins, while reflecting the lives of everyday people in 2026. And I think that's a show many of us would rather see. I hope the producers take a long, hard look at the state of Coronation Street. Otherwise, I fear for its future.